Thank you, Alan. Councilmember Hines.
Thank you. I think all of us here know who you are, but just for the record, will you?
Alan Salazar.
Thank you.
Mayor's Chief of Staff.
And thank you. And certainly, I don't know an agency that doesn't have staffing challenges. I would certainly also suggest that we do have consultants that we have regularly engaged for stakeholder engagement or architecting projects, and I would certainly love if we consider leveraging some of those third parties until we do have that magic wand that we overcome our staffing challenges. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you. So thank you, CFO. Yep, go ahead, Margaret.
Stephanie just passed me the note. It's the Westwood Library, it's the new library. So.
I should know that. All right. Thank you so much, CFO Margaret Danuser and the DOF team. So this is our only presentation today. We're back on Monday with Parks and Recreation at 1 p.m. right here. That's our only Monday presentation, and then we're a full day in here Tuesday through Friday. I want to make sure that folks know in the public, we've launched a new page on our council website that allows you to follow along with the hearings where expansions match the 6 identified council priorities in a dashboard. And with that, thank you all for being here, and we'll see you on Monday.
Hey Denver, the decision is yours on April 4th. I'm Russell Haythorne from Denver 7. Join us for live forums with the candidates vying for office across the Mile High City. On February 22nd, we hear for the candidates for Council Districts 1, 3, and 4. Catch it on Denver 8 TV, Facebook, or on denverdecides.org. Denver Decides, where Denver voters turn to get informed.
Hey Denver, the decision is yours on April 4th. Make your voice heard by voting in the 2023 municipal election. Stay up to date on the candidates and the issues you'll see on your ballot at denverdecides.org. There you'll find Denver's most complete guide to help you choose your next mayor, city council members, and more. Candidate profiles, live candidate forums, and ballot issue breakdowns can all be found at denverdecides.org. Denver Decides, where Denver voters turn to get informed.
Welcome to your Denver City Council. Please stand by. Full coverage of your Denver City Council begins now.
Good afternoon, everyone. Chief, we're going to start. Chief. Good afternoon, everyone. This afternoon's meeting is being interpreted into Spanish. Sam and Vera, would you please introduce yourselves and let our viewers know how to enable translation on their devices?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for having us this afternoon. My name is Sam Guzman with the CLC. And I'm here with my colleague Vidia, and today we will be your interpreters for today's meeting. And I will now give the instructions in Spanish on how to access the interpretation. Buenas tardes a todos, mi nombre es Samuel Guzmán y estoy aquí con la CLC y juntamente con mi colega Viria y seremos sus intérpretes para esta reunión de esta tarde. Si desea escuchar la reunión en español, vaya a su pantalla y busque el icono de globo que dice interpretación. Oprima ese botón, ese icono y luego seleccione lenguaje en español y podrá escuchar toda la reunión en español. Muchas gracias. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sam. Welcome everyone to the Denver City Council meeting of Tuesday, February 21st.
Bienvenidos a todos
No,
a
no, no,
esta.
no, no.
Muted. Thank you, Tim. To the City Council meeting of Tuesday, February 21st, 2023. Council members, please rise as you're able and join Councilman Hines in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you very much. And council members, please join Councilman Hines as he leads us in the Denver City Council land acknowledgement.
The Denver City Council honors and acknowledges that the land on which we reside is the traditional territory of the Ute, Cheyenne, and Arapaho peoples. We also recognize the 48 contemporary tribal nations that are historically tied to the lands that make up the state of Colorado. We honor elders past, present, and future, and those who have stewarded this land throughout generations. We also recognize that government, academic, and cultural institutions were founded upon and continue to enact exclusions and erasures of Indigenous peoples. May this acknowledgement demonstrate a commitment to working to dismantle ongoing legacies of oppression and inequities and recognize the current and future contributions of Indigenous communities in Denver.
Thank you very much. Madam Secretary, roll call.
Cedabaka,
Here.
Black. Here. Clark. Flynn,
Here.
Gilmore,
Here.
Herndon,
Here.
Hines,
Here.
Cashman,
Here.
Kinich,
Here.
Ortega,
Here.
Sandoval, Sawyer. Here. Madam President.
Here. Would you call Councilwoman Sandoval so we can get her in real quick?
Councilwoman Sandoval.
Here.
12 members present.
Thank you so much. There are 12 members present. Council has a quorum. Approval of the minutes. Are there any corrections to the minutes of February 13th? Seeing none, the minutes stand approved. Council announcements. Are there any announcements today? Okay, seeing no one in queue, I will just mention one that's happening for citywide effort, but it's kicking off in Council District 3 is the Indigenous Historic Context Study. You may remember we completed a Chicano Latino Historic Context Study already, and we're preparing with CPD to kick off the Indigenous Historic Context Study. So this is an examination of people, places, events that are memorable for that particular community so that we can appropriately plan to recognize what has happened that has been important to the Indigenous community in Denver. That is going to be a very deep history, and I look forward to really seeing what that study is able to really explore throughout our entire city. It will kick off at the Denver Indian Center on Morrison Road this Saturday from 11 o'clock to 1 o'clock. If you missed that, I'm sure there'll be a number of other places to engage. Share your stories, share your family's stories, share what you know in order to ensure that it's reflected in that study. Thank you. There are no presentations. There are no communications. We do have one proclamation being read this afternoon. Councilman Herndon, will you read Proclamation 180?
Yes, Madam President. Proclamation 23-0180, a proclamation honoring retired Lieutenant Leslie Les Conrad Perry. Whereas the Denver Police Museum, the Denver Police Department, the Denver Black Officers Association, and the Blair Caldwell African American Research Library have all partnered to celebrate Black History Month, February 2023. And whereas the above organizations have decided to honor an outstanding Black Denver police officer who chose to serve the citizens of the city and county of Denver. And whereas Leslie Les Perry began his long career with the Denver Police Department in 1987 and worked in a wide variety of assignments, including being a neighborhood police officer, a gang task force officer, detective supervisor, internal affairs officer, pattern crimes command officer, leading hostage negotiation teams, managing the bomb squad, and teaching law-related education at Montbello High School. And whereas throughout his career, Lieutenant Perry was recognized by citizens, supervisors, and community leaders for his dedication to communities and his outstanding performance, and received more than 100 awards and certificates. And whereas Commander Perry was appointed by Denver Police Chief Robert White as the first Black male commander serving in District 5, where he served from 2013 to 2017 before retiring in 2019 after 32 years of service. Now therefore be it proclaimed by the Council of the City and County of Denver, Section 1, that the Council of the City and County of Denver hereby recognizes and honors Lieutenant Les Perry for his service to the citizens of Denver. Section 2, that the Secretary of the Council shall affix the seal of the City and County of Denver to this proclamation, and that a copy be transmitted to Lieutenant Les Perry and the Denver Police Museum.
Thank you so much. Councilmember Herndon, your motion to adopt.
I move that Proclamation 180 be adopted.
Thank you. I'll need a move. Thank you. Move in a second. Comments by members of council. I'll start with you, Councilman Herndon.
Thank you, Madam President. You know, last Monday, I talked about Black excellence on the football field after the Super Bowl, and I appreciate following that up with Black excellence right here within the City and County of Denver. And not only did I got to work with Les from Police District 5, and just honored and just say congratulations, job well done. 32 years of successful service. You are inspiration, and congratulations on your retirement. It's been a few years. Brenda, it's good to see you as well. You both just look so happy. And well deserved. Thank you for all that you've done for your service. And I just wanted to take this moment to honor you for, sadly, my last proclamation for Black History Month, that I've done several of these over 12 years, but I wish you well. And I hope my colleagues will support this. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Councilwoman Ortega.
Well, I don't know if it's appropriate to ask to add my name to the proclamation, but gosh, it's been 25, we were talking 25 years ago that we worked together when Denver had its first community policing program in the city of Denver. And we were just reminiscing out in the hall about what an incredible difference that model made in our communities across the city. This was during the summer of violence, where we had kids killing each other in different neighborhoods, and working as boots on the ground in the community and addressing some of the critical needs at the neighborhood level was part of what happened. And Les, you were an instrumental part of all of that in helping our youth realize there's a different way. I remember that being the first opportunity where Denver did overnight camping up at, what's the park across the way from Chief Hosa? I always forget the name of it. It's part of our mountain park system, but we took kids to camp overnight, and it was just an incredible experience because so many of our kids had never been to the mountains. And we had police officers that were chaperones to the young kids, and they came back with a whole different outlook on life, because many of them hadn't been out of their city, let alone in the mountains. And so that work really paid dividends in getting to build strong relationships with our police department, and broke down so many barriers. And you know, families in these neighborhoods would not sit out on their front porch in the summertime when it was, 100 degrees outside, because of the violence that was happening in their community and the drive-bys that were occurring. And having the police work out of a storefront, it's actually a home in the neighborhood, with a paid staff person, made all the difference in the world. And unless you were right there in the middle of all of that. We had 3 neighborhoods in the city, and oftentimes the officers actually moved around the city as well, because some kids were traveling into different neighborhoods, and it was the officers who would say, "What are you doing here? You belong back in your neighborhood." So I want to thank you, and not just for that work as a Weed and Seed program. I know you've continued your work with our young people in the community, and just through your many years of serving this city. Brenda, thank you. I know it always takes a toll on the family, so thank you for having lent him to the rest of all of us to do the job that he did so well for the city. And I'm honored to add my name to this proclamation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilman Flynn?
Thank you, Madam President. I guess, can we still call you Commander? What do we call you when you're retired?
Yes.
I just want to extend my thanks to you for your many years of dedicated, passionate, sincere service to the citizens of this city. You're an example of what we strive to be in our community, and we need to see more of it. Sorry as we are to see you retire. We're very happy for you that you can enjoy your retirement years. But above everything else, thank you for your service to this city.
Thank you. Councilwoman Gilmore?
Thank you, Council President Torres. Many of the same comments. Just want to really thank you. I can't call you anything but Commander. But your commitment to the far Northeast and your family's commitment to the far Northeast as well, especially Montbello and Green Valley Ranch, and seeing you at community events and just serving the community in the way that you do. Will forever be grateful to you, and look forward to many more travels and family and all of those fun things that I'm sure you've put aside to do this service. And so just want to thank you again for everything that you've done for the citizens of Denver. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Commander, thank you so much for your service to Denver. And it's been a few years since your retirement, so I hope it feels good to be coming back a little bit now that we're in person and you don't have to work it. But thank you. It's not easy being the first of anything in our fields. And so thank you for stepping up and into those leadership roles. It's deeply appreciated. Let's see, Madam Secretary, roll call.
Sita Baca?
Aye.
Black? Aye. Clark? Flynn?
Aye.
Gilmore?
Aye.
Herndon?
Aye.
Hines?
Aye.
Cashman?
Aye.
Kinich? Aye. Ortega?
Aye.
Sandoval? Aye. Sawyer? Aye. Madam President?
Aye. Madam Secretary, close the voting and announce the results.
12 ayes.
12 ayes. Proclamation 22-180 has been adopted. We have 5 minutes for the acceptance. Councilmember Herndon, please call up whoever you'd like to speak to the proclamation.
Thank you, Madam President. We will certainly hear from Les Perry, but I also want to acknowledge other examples of Black excellence we have here in the chambers. And first, our Police Chief, Ron Thomas, as well as Sergeant Haber from the Denver Black Police Officers Association. I wanted to see if either of those individuals wanted to speak. And then after that, Les Perry.
Thank you, Councilman Herndon, Madam President, members of council. I certainly appreciate how you continue to acknowledge and recognize the proud history of Denver, proud history of the Denver Police Department. When you start acknowledging contemporaries of mine, it starts to make me feel a little old. I'm young at heart, but certainly, in all seriousness, Les Perry deserves all the recognition in the world. He's been a true hero in the city, a true hero to me, and so I'm thankful to share this moment for him.
Thank you. Hello, Council. Once again, we come before you as we have years prior, and we have appreciated, certainly the Black Police Officers Organization has appreciated the relationship that we've had with City Council here. I can tell you that we reach out to all of you, but Councilman Herndon is just very quick on the draw. but we know that everyone would be stepping up to the plate to sponsor these proclamations. I can tell you when we selected Lieutenant Les Perry as the honoree, the first word that I thought of was servant leader. Talk about having a person in place who's legitimate about their actions. I can tell you that this man has been responsible for doubling and perhaps tripling the minority officers of the Denver Police Department single-handedly. And I'm so glad that we are, as the kids say, giving him his flowers now. We appreciate this opportunity. Lieutenant Perry, I didn't even know his first name was last name. I'm certainly not going to call him that. Thank you so very much. Thank you for everything that you've done for the Black Police Officers Organization, everything that you've done to encourage officers of all races and ethnicity to put something above themselves, and that is the safety and security of the city and county of Denver. We are committed to this city, all of our officers, and we're legitimate in ensuring that everyone has a retirement like Lieutenant Perry. So thank you so very much, Council. We know that we're going to be losing most of you, at least in this capacity, but we look forward to your replacement. And I'm sure that they will be just as committed to ensuring that Black history, which we all know is American history, is on the minds of everyone, not just on one month. So thank you so very much for your commitment to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Carla. Thank you, Chief. Councilman Herndon, thank you so much. It has been a pleasure. Also, it's such an honor to be honored. But yes, I do recall the days back in Regency, and certainly at your house teaching kids at Councilwoman Gilmore and working with Councilman Kanish. So it's been a long journey. I enjoyed it. But serving the cities of Denver and the law enforcement space has been a great journey for me and my family. I've made so many friends. I've watched so many great stories. It seems like sometimes we just highlight our lowlights and lowlight our highlights. We should put light on all of it, but to take the time to highlight, I certainly appreciate it, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and to your family for being here. Madam Secretary, please read the bills for introduction.
In Finance and Governments Committee, 23-0102, a bill for an ordinance making a rescission from and an appropriation in the Capital Improvements and Capital Maintenance Fund. 23-0104, a bill for an ordinance approving a proposed real estate purchase agreement between the City and County of Denver and Lifespan Local LLC for the acquisition of a condominium unit for the Denver Public Library branch in the Westwood neighborhood, located at 3300 Nevada Place. In Safety, Education, Housing, Education, and Homelessness Committee, 23-0114, a bill for an ordinance amending certain provisions of Chapter 2 concerning the Citizen Oversight Board.
Thank you. Council members, this is your last opportunity to call out an item. Councilman Hines, will you make the motions for us today?
Yes, Council President.
Thank you. Now I'll do a recap. Under resolutions, no items have been called out. Under bills for introduction, no items have been called out. Under bills for final consideration, no items have been called out. And under pending, no items have been called out. That concludes any of the items to be called out. All bills for introduction are ordered published. Council members, remember this is a consent or block vote, and you'll need to vote aye. Otherwise, your last chance to call out an item for a separate vote. Councilman Hines, will you please put the resolutions for adoption and the bills on final consideration for final passage on the floor?
I move that resolutions be adopted and bills on final consideration be placed upon final consideration and do pass in a block for the following items: 23-0108, 23-0109, 23-0110, 23-0111, 23-0112, 23-0079, 23-0096, 23-0097, 23-0098, 23-0099, 23-0100, 23-0101, 23-0117, 23-0176, 23-0044, 23-0095, 23-0177, 23-0102, 23-0104, 23-0114, 23-0078, 23-0080, 23-0043.
Thank you very much. Can I get a move in a second? Excellent. It's been moved and seconded. Madam Secretary, roll call.
Sita Baca,
Aye.
Black,
Aye.
Clark, Flynn,
Aye.
Gilmore,
Aye.
Herndon,
Aye.
Hines,
Aye.
Cashman,
Aye.
Kinich,
Aye.
Ortega,
Aye.
Sandoval,
Aye.
Sawyer.
Aye.
Madam President.
Aye. Madam Secretary, close the voting and announce the results.
12 ayes.
12 ayes, the resolutions have been adopted and the bills have been placed upon final consideration and do pass. Tonight, there'll be a required public hearing on Council Bill 23-12, changing the zoning classification for 1254 North Monaco Street Parkway in Montclair, and a required public hearing on Council Bill 23-11, changing the zoning classification for 4320 Morrison Road, 753 South Raleigh Street, and 4849 West Kentucky Avenue in Westwood. Anyone wishing to speak on these matters must go online to sign up during the recess of council. If there are no objections from the members of council, we'll recess until 5:30.
Free and open to the public, the Petite Parade will take place inside the Mavens Windsor Room with festive entertainment provided by Denver's Handsome Little Devils, including live music, dancing, and Mardi Gras galore. Expect fantastic prizes awarded to participating floats. Looking Back, Moving Forward offers a unique opportunity to see the pieces from the collection for the first time in decades. The exhibit highlights 45 images spanning a range of genres, approaches, and techniques, honoring the Colorado Photographic Arts Center's past while looking to the future as the organization celebrates its 60th year. Release your inner child at the Children's Museum's adults-only craft beer extravaganza. Tickets include samples of beers from local breweries, light bites, and best of all, an evening of play in our world-class exhibits. No kids this time, must be 21 or older. Our Planet, live in concert, will feature highlights from the groundbreaking documentary series. The stunning visuals will be showcased on a giant screen, featuring phenomenal lighting and outstanding sound from a 44-piece live orchestra. You'll be taken on a journey of beautiful visual and sound effects, creating a unique view of our planet's awe-inspiring glory. Contemporary artist Melanie Yazzie weaves together nature and narrative in multi-layered prints, paintings, and sculptures to explore the experiences that shaped her. Her work conveys qualities of wonder and healing, while encouraging viewers to engage with complex indigenous experiences. En garde! Check out the best young fencers in the country as they compete at the Junior Olympic Championships. Not all who wonder are lost. Local artists display works they've created while allowing their wonder to take over during the creative process. And that's a quick look at what's happening in Denver this week.
Square deal, because he is entitled to know more and should receive no less.
But the optimism of Roosevelt and the progressives would prove to be misplaced. as tensions between capital and labor grew ever more acrimonious, neither side hesitated to resort to the lowest forms of political corruption to win or hold on to power.
For 3 weeks, I was absent from this city 1,000 miles, and nothing in all my experience so brought the blush of shame to my cheeks as the constant inquiry in every city I visited, what about the terrible election frauds in Denver? A good lady of California showed me clippings from the papers of Washington City showing an investigation by the National Congress that showed up this election blackness in all its horror. Judge Ben Lindsay.
By 1904, tensions between the business-backed government and the increasingly organized wage laborers in the mines and smelting factories had reached an all-time high. In 1903, after blasting the Western Federation of Miners Union as a collection of socialists and anarchists under the evil influence of a criminal leadership, Republican Governor Frederick Peabody declared martial law and sent the National Guard to Cripple Creek, Telluride, and other hotspots. Ostensibly charged with keeping the peace, these troopers were in fact deployed to disrupt the unions and break the morale of strikers by any means necessary. But this time, the miners and their Democratic allies were determined to fight back. Adopting the slogan, "Anybody but Peabody," the miners and the Democratic Party turned their sights on the election of 1904 as their best hope to turn the tide. In a desperate gambit to mitigate the fraud and coercion on the Republican side, Denver's Democratic machine took to rounding up gamblers, prostitutes, ex-convicts, and whoever else could be found to cast multiple ballots in precincts throughout the city. The result was an improbable victory for perennial Democratic candidate Alva Adams. But no sooner were the votes tallied than Republicans began to allege massive voter fraud in Denver.
The Democrats respond, well, there was also illegal Republican voting, which was true in other areas. It was a hopelessly corrupt election on all sides. But at any rate, the Supreme Court throws Adams out and reinstalls Peabody. But the Democrats are so outraged and there's such an uproar there that they come to a compromise, and Peabody resigns, and his lieutenant governor, Jesse McDonald, takes the governorship. So you had 3 governors, Alva Adams, James M. Peabody, and Jesse McDonald, and within 24 hours running the state in a sad day in 1905.
Colorado had arrived on the national scene not as the shining example of prosperity and enlightenment envisioned by every governor from Gilpin down to Peabody himself, but as the latest example of American political corruption run amok. If ever in the history of Colorado there was a time for a reformer to take the stage, it was now. Luckily, just such a man waited in the wings. He was known as Honest John Shafroth. During 4 terms representing Colorado in the United States Congress, John Shafroth not only fought hard to fund good roads and irrigation projects for Colorado, he also took an outspoken and principled stance on behalf of national women's suffrage and election campaign reform, controversial issues that most congressmen of the period avoided. Visited the Colorado Capitol in October of 1936, he came as a conquering hero, drawing one of the largest crowds ever assembled there.
The true conservative seeks to protect the system of private property and free enterprise by correcting such injustices and inequalities as arise from it.
As always, the Capitol building itself reflected the new spirit of the age. Alan True's 8-panel mural in the Great Rotunda, begun in 1934 with a grant from Roosevelt's Federal Emergency Relief Agency, paid tribute not to Colorado's most successful capitalists, but to the ordinary and anonymous men and women whose daily labors made progress and prosperity possible. After federal funding ran out, philanthropist Claude Betcher and the Betcher Foundation supported the completion of the work, which True installed in 1940.
The Alan True murals depicting the history of water begins with American Indians and thunderstorms. It follows pioneers and gold miners, irrigated farms. It follows hydroelectric power, all the way around to a scene showing the beauty, the opportunity on the horizon, using this resource carefully to benefit the entire state.
Each panel is accompanied by a verse penned by poet Thomas Hornsby Farrell, whose father, William Farrell, was curator of the Capitol's popular historical collections a generation before. In his final panel, the artist imagines what lies ahead.
True wanted to leave it up to future generations to figure out how they were going to deal with this issue of water. And the fact that this old pioneer with the white beard is sitting there looking on youth and kind of questioning them, and he's got an empty glass of water and it's upside down.
This humble paean to work and community in the heart of Colorado's capital would serve as a reminder to generations to come that Colorado recognizes the contributions of all its citizens. It was a message that could not have come at a better time. For the extraordinary pressures and stresses of World War II were feeding yet another epidemic of intolerance. In 1942, the American government rounded up 110,000 Japanese American citizens from the Pacific coast and prepared to ship them to internment camps deep within the country. Far from protesting this violation of constitutional rights, American statesmen and press outlets competed to see who could demand the harshest treatment for the interned Japanese. One man stood in opposition to the rhetoric: Colorado Governor Ralph Carr.
And in that, he was alone among all Western governors, many of them who issued extremely intolerant statements and threatened to hang the Japanese if they were brought into their state. Governor Carr took the high road, and he gave the Japanese hope that even after the war, they could have a life in this state.
Rarely in American political history has an elected official taken such a huge political risk for no other reason than to do what he believed was right. When citizens in the southeastern Colorado town of Granada threatened violence against Japanese Americans relocated there, Carr traveled to the community and directly confronted the mob.
And he said to them, we have to stand up in principle for the rights of the Japanese, because next time it could be you or you or you who faces this.
The memory of his deeds, while not helping him win Ed Johnson's U.S. Senate seat in a 1942 campaign, did elevate Carr to a place of special distinction in Colorado's capital. The post-war years brought boom times to Colorado, reminiscent of the heady days when the Capitol building was constructed, and there seemed to be no end in sight. As modern skyscrapers changed the skyline of downtown Denver, Coloradoans gradually grew accustomed to seeing their venerable Capitol building stand out against a glittering backdrop of steel and glass. Modern-day immigrants from across the country flocked to Colorado as a place promising that rarest of combinations: abundant open space and opportunities for employment. Colorado's capital, a conventional place of customs and traditions, wasn't always quick to grasp the new realities. Then came an overwhelming series of national catastrophes: the Kennedy assassination, Vietnam, the Mideast oil embargo, Nixon. The era of popular dissent was born, and the west portal of the Capitol became center stage for the protests and petitions of the people. Few years saw more action than 1969. In April of that year, the Black Panthers' protests had passed, but the changes they wrought in Colorado's culture were still being felt. Elected in 1975, brash young environmentalist Governor Richard Lamb epitomized the new era with an independent style that seemed to fit the evolving cultural aesthetic. Reflecting these historic shifts, the legislature decided the time had come for another update to the Capitol building artwork, one that would make the building more truly representative of all Coloradoans. In 1976, to mark the 100th anniversary of Colorado's statehood, government officials dedicated Women's Gold, a spectacular silk tapestry commemorating the contributions of 19 women to Colorado history. Also that year came the addition of stained glass windows honoring Opportunity School founder Emily Griffith, former state treasurer Virginia Neal Blue, and territorial-era African-American businessman Barney Ford.
In the house, we only have one stained glass window. It's Barney Ford. He was influential in having Colorado not become a state until we became a free state.
the arc of history, as Dr. King said, is very long, and it bends towards justice. And that became very clear to me standing under Barney Ford's picture when I gave my first speech to the chamber as Speaker of the House.
Finally, in 1977, heritage windows were installed in the old Supreme Court room, honoring minority leaders in Colorado history. The mapmaker Don Miera y Pacheco, Ute chiefs Jack House and Buckskin Charlie, pioneering African-American businesswoman Clara Brown, Chinese businessman Chin Lin Su, and Japanese entrepreneur Naochi Hokazono. The legislature was justly proud of these latest additions to a glorious artistic collection. But for those charged with maintaining the Capitol's more basic functions, the growing splendor of the building's interior seemed to make elected officials overlook the precarious condition of the 100-year-old structure.
There were reports done in 1990 and 1995 to determine exactly what the structural condition of the Capitol was, and the news wasn't good. There were all sorts of fire dangers in the Capitol building. In fact, there was one report that suggested that from the moment a wastebasket fire would start, it could be as soon as 8 minutes later that there would start being structural collapse in the building.
With their feet literally held to the fire, the legislature finally approved a multi-year life safety project to install sprinklers and emergency exit stairways throughout the building, funded by the State Historical Fund, a program of History Colorado. But even before that project was completed, it became clear that the Capitol building had developed another potentially life-threatening problem. A study revealed that the cast iron supports holding the dome in place were severely damaged by water seepage and rust.
Well, in 2006, I got a call that a piece of the dome had fallen off. It had fallen from the ceiling of the outside observation deck.
The Capitol building is well over a century old now, and we're at a point now where we're faced with an absolute demand for maintenance and repairs of that dome that can't be put off any longer.
All of the painted gray cast iron is failing, and it needs to be removed, and then the rivets are deteriorating in various areas. So we need to investigate and replace those metal rivets with stainless steel.
Clearly, the Capitol building is now showing its age. In Michigan and Texas, where Elijah Myers designed capitals were built in the same era as Colorado's, painstaking restorations undertaken in the 1980s and 90s won widespread praise. But with estimates for a full rehabilitation of the Colorado Capitol running as high as $250 million, the project is virtually impossible to fund without first passing the difficult hurdle of voter approval. One day soon, Coloradoans will have to decide.
There are few symbols that are more powerful for the state of Colorado than our gold dome on the state capitol.
The people of Colorado have to rally around this building. Its care, its condition is our responsibility, and we have to do everything we can, even in difficult times, to save this structure that represents all of us.
Future governors, legislators, and citizens could surely gather in another building to face the issues of their time. But there is reason to doubt if they would remember as clearly in a new setting the lessons of Colorado's history. Separated from the symbols of the past, would government be guided as well by the demands of destiny? And would the immortal words of Thomas Hornsby Farrell resound outside the great rotunda? Beyond the sundown is tomorrow's wisdom. Today is going to be long, long ago.
It gives you the sense that you're part of this great continuum, part of something that's much bigger than yourself. This is a building worth caring about and worth maintaining and keeping as a symbol of all that's great about the state of Colorado.
If you could give me a magic wand and say you could have a new multi-million-dollar new capitol like they have in a number of states, I'd say no. You need the sense of historical proportion that the Capitol gives us. The whole traditions of Colorado being a mixture of cultures and people. Winston Churchill said it best. We build our buildings, and then they build us.
Lynx are representative of wilderness, of wild values, of the natural world.
They're one of those species that's sort of an indicator for wildness. When you think of those places, you think of places that are hard to get to. You think of places that are rugged, that are tough to survive in. There's this sort of mystical suite of species that live out there that are rare and kind of reclusive. When I get out there and I see these tracks or I hear this sound, that's an indicator to me that I'm off the grid.
The thrill of having lynx out there is more vicarious in that we all know there's lynx out there, and that makes the system better, but we rarely get to see them. We don't really know what caused the extirpation of lynx in Colorado. Lynx are vulnerable to trapping, and their fur has always been very, very valuable. The boom of mining and the alteration in streams, some of the archaic, I'll call it, forest management practices, clear cuts that occurred were bad. Many of these causes were human-induced. We also have the ability to reverse some of those. Aldo Leopold said, you need to keep all the cogs in the wheel to have a properly functioning ecosystem.
We are responsible for conservation and management of all the native species in Colorado. Part of our job and part of our mission as an agency is to take care of the native species in this state, and lynx were one of them.
I started working on the Lynx Project in 1997. To restore a species into its native habitat is a unique thrill. No other states or provinces or anybody had ever done a successful lynx reintroduction. So we were pioneering how to do it. We initially were working with British Columbia and Alaska. Their populations were high. They were actively trapping them. They were as thrilled to be involved in a reintroduction in Colorado as I was. The first release was such a spectacle. We had been working towards this for 3 years. The act of opening the door and the lynx takes a tentative step out, looks around, and then starts to trot off. It was magical to think, wow, I had been part of this, and now that beautiful critter is back on the landscape. What happened was surprising to everybody. Within about 3 weeks, we saw the first starvation, and that was catastrophic to us. In retrospect, they were already starting to starve, and they came to us in marginal condition. We reconfigured the whole program so that we were going to hold them for a minimum of 3 weeks and feed them well. Following that protocol, the starvations stopped. In 2010, we said the reintroduction phase was successful and was now complete. At that point, the attention turned to help sustain lynx presence forever.
We know from the research we've done here that about 3/4 of what they eat in terms of their diet is snowshoe hares. Bottom line of lynx conservation and keeping lynx on the landscape comes down to management of snowshoe hares, and snowshoe hares are heavily influenced by forest management. Our relationship with the Forest Service is pretty important. Our agency is the agency that put these animals back. We're in charge of the management of that species and monitoring of that species. But that species lives in the National Forest System. So they're the ones that really provide the habitat for lynx and for snowshoe hares. Forest management is a pretty complex endeavor from a Parks and Wildlife standpoint. We want to make sure that we have big chunks of good lynx habitat and good hare habitat. From a Forest Service standpoint, they have a mandate to provide forest products for the public, in addition to providing habitat for wildlife and a series of other things that they need to pay attention to. From an operator's standpoint, they need to be able to get the product off of the land and turn a profit off of that. And so The name of the game there is to get all those folks together and figure out how to compromise so that we can all get what we need. One of the really valuable things that we do with our Forest Service partners are these field trips. There's no substitute for being out on the ground to see, the kinds of things that they're implementing to try to understand their world and make sure that they understand our world in terms of lynx and hare biology and ecology.
Some of the things that we noted when we saw data of where lynx from the first reintroductions were hanging out is a lot of those coincided to areas that we've managed pretty heavily in the past. Those actions actually thinned the overstory and initiated new undergrowth. So that created the conditions favorable for hare, which then supported lynx in those areas.
Good hare habitat generally comes down to what we call dense horizontal cover. When you look sort of sideways through the forest from 2 meters on down toward the ground, how much of that is actually covered up. That is really key for snowshoe hares. These little trees like this stuff here, those saplings provide both cover, hiding cover for hares, and also the needles are what they eat. That's what sustains them all through the winter. That's the important thing to look for when walking through a forest and trying to figure out if it's good for hares or not.
One of the forest-wide objectives is to provide a sustainable supply of timber to the local and regional timber economies. America needs wood. We have changed forest conditions now with wide-scale beetle kill. Big outbreaks like we've experienced here don't really mesh well with that objective. The purpose of a lot of our salvage is really just aimed at recovering the economic value of these dead trees. Efforts that we can take now really to protect a regeneration are good for a timber management approach, and they also benefit wildlife, so there's a mutual benefit between the resources there.
This is a big sale that they've been working on for several years, just finished it up a couple months ago. Got a lot of volume of timber out of this, as you can see. That's just the slash pile of stuff that wasn't usable material. The cool part though is this stand had a lot of green in it, a lot of subalpine fir component, and they did a nice job of leaving as much of that as they could. And so there's a lot of patches that look just like this where there's a nice wall of green. You got a lot of nice dense horizontal cover, a lot of good places for hares to hang out and eat, and good habitat for them to survive the winter. So this is a good example of a nice compromise in terms of timber management. They got a lot of volume, but at the same time left a good portion of it for hares and for lynx, and did a nice job here.
Monitoring hare populations is obviously incredibly important to intelligent management. We accomplish that in a variety of ways. We can go out into the woods and set a bunch of traps and capture and recapture hares. You can get density, you can put collars on these animals and figure out where they're going and what types of habitats they're using, and resource selection. And that's super helpful. That's also expensive and time consuming. At the other end of the spectrum, you can do sort of non-invasive stuff. You can sample hundreds and hundreds of plots and count the number of hare pellets in those plots, and that's a good index for hare density as well.
We have these site maps of the area. All of the black dots are these random sampling points. We put stakes in the ground that we need to revisit and count and clear the pellets. And so we split all those things up, but they're random points, so they're kind of all over the place, and we got to make sure that we get them all and we don't duplicate stuff. So each person draw out a plan in the order of where they're going to go. I was in the office one day making these, and my daughter happened to be in there. She was like 6 maybe, and thought these were all like connect the dot things, and started like just drawing lines like 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm like, no, they're not connect the dot. But then it dawned on me, that's actually a very good idea.
The amount of pellets in a stand has a pretty good correlation to the number of hares, and then that's compared to the number of lynx. There's different stands, they're called, with different forest treatments, and there's 50 stakes that have just been kind of randomly put out within the stand. This site is a control site. The Forest Service hasn't come in and done any thinning or anything like that. It's just all natural. The control site just kind of gives us a base of if nothing had been done, that's how many hares would be in the area. Working on a project that has to do with lynx success, sometimes it's kind of hard, like I forget while I'm out here just counting rabbit poop all the time. I kind of have to stop and remind myself that it's important data. because it's keeping tabs on what the lynx are doing and how they're surviving up here. They've got an incredible background in Colorado. The lynx are kind of a little shimmer of hope because they've done so well. I knew it. GPS has done me wrong.
Defining success with a reintroduction is kind of a difficult thing to do. We want to make sure that they're here decade after decade after decade. And so the way to do that is to implement some sort of a long-term monitoring program.
Jake started to design a protocol of how to monitor this population of lynx that were spread out throughout the San Juans, low density, and rarely observed.
It's hard to get a handle on them. You can't just go out into an area and count the number of lynx. You can't just go out there and observe them and say, yep, they're still here. So what we're left with is going into these units and trying to find evidence that they're here.
We have grids set up on the landscape, which represents an animal's home range during the winter time. Within those grids, the ideal way would be to go out after fresh snow, look for lynx tracks. There's some areas we just can't get to, or it's just not safe to get to during the winter time. And those areas, what we'll do is we'll put game cameras up. And we set the cameras up in this fall, leave them out during the winter time, and then we'll pick them up in the spring or summer. Lynx are a cat. Their behavior is a lot like a house cat. To catch attention from far away, it's visual, trying to get that visual stimulus in the cat. And then once they come in, to use a scent lure to help bring the animal in front of the camera, and we can get that picture of them. Even though I'm out there in the woods and I don't see a lynx, just to know that they're there and then to actually get confirmation, to me that's pretty exciting.
Tracking is much more efficient in that typically on a snowmobile 2 to 5 miles and you'll cross a track.
The issue with tracks is, under certain conditions, it's easy to confuse one species with another. Tracks may be several weeks old, they may be melted out, they may have fresh snow on top of them. We drive around until we find tracks that look right in terms of the size of the individual prints, the gait and the stride length and those sorts of things. But we investigate further.
This track had kind of the pattern or the spacing that I've seen often before. Since it's underneath a lot of fresh snow, I'm going to dig up around one of the divots and try to get underneath the compaction zone where the foot of the lynx actually pushes into the snow. So I'm just kind of tossing all the fragile snow. You can see the track inside, and then you can see the classic shape here. And because of that, that's starting to look pretty good as a lynx track.
So now, Doug has dug up this compression signature. We're pretty sure this is a set of lynx tracks that we're on. So the next thing is we want to get an eDNA sample. In the eDNA, it stands for environmental DNA. As it walked through the snow, there are skin cells that it left in the prints as it was walking. And so what we want to try to do is collect some of those skin cells so that we can send them off to the lab and confirm that this is in fact a lynx track and that there's lynx here still in this sample unit. We need to dig down through the fresh snow to get down to the point here where the foot actually was touching the snow, and that's where we want to sample and fill up our sampling bags. eDNA is a new technology. It's been around for a handful of years, only been 2 or 3 years, I think they've been using it in snow. It's pretty cool technology, but it only gets us down to the level of species. So there isn't a lot of genetic material to work with, just like I say, a few skin cells that are sloughed off in each print. But it can tell us if this is a lynx or not, confirm that it is.
We started on the project in 2004, so it's been kind of nice to continue to see lynx tracks at this very moment. It's exciting to be part of this still, and exciting that the lynx are here.
Conservation of a species like lynx is pretty complicated. There's a lot of moving parts. How you manage the forest influences what happens with the hare world, and what happens in the hare world then influences what happens with lynx. It's such a cool species to work with. Canada lynx is something you see on National Geographic. So when you actually get the opportunity to work on a project like that, it's pretty cool to play any kind of a role, especially, when it turns out to be a successful program to reestablish a species where it was extirpated and to do it in a way that I think, most of the folks in our agency and the general public in Colorado is sort of proud of the fact that lynx are back here on the landscape.
The name Buffalo Bill conjures up, for many, the romance of the American West, childhood memories of Western movies and dime novels, and a sense of cultural identity that frames both the legend and the reality of the American West as we know it today. For others, Buffalo Bill represents the tragedy of American conquest and the loss of bison, indigenous lands, and autonomy. But who exactly was this man, this legend of the West, and what was his role in American history?
I think with Buffalo Bill, when we ask what role did he play, we just instantly have to say, better make that plural. What roles did he play? Because he is just a great training ground for the mind, for anybody who is tempted to simplify the people of the past.
Buffalo Bill was not just a creature of fiction. He received the Congressional Medal of Honor. He was very much a part of the Indian Wars and all of the things that he later on portrayed in his Wild West show.
Buffalo Bill is an interesting character and a very complex story across time and space and lots of different concepts that are a little bit controversial and sometimes really cool and really fascinating. And all of those things come together in the Wild West story and Buffalo Bill's story.
The 1800s in North America were a complicated time of both expansion and settlement, of gain and loss, of fulfilling the dreams of some and crushing the hopes of others. Right in the middle of this turbulent time in American history was William F. Cody, later known as Buffalo Bill. Will Cody came of age in Kansas Territory during a period when pro- and anti-slavery factions split Kansas Territory. Even as far west as Kansas, the events leading up to the Civil War had tragic consequences for young Will Cody.
His father did not think slavery should be in Kansas, spoke out about it at a public meeting, at which point a pro-slavery man jumped up, sort of stepped onto the dais, if you will, where he was talking, and stabbed him several times.
Cody's father eventually died as a result of his wounds, but not before the pro-slavers made life difficult for the family.
The family itself would be raided by some of them. They would come in and take food. They stole Buffalo Bill's horse. It was pretty tough.
And so, at the age of 11, after having lost his father and only brother, Will Cody set out to support his mother and sisters and find his place in the world. By the age of 17, he had worked as a messenger for an early version of the Pony Express, carried messages for the Army, drove mule trains along the Oregon Trail, prospected for gold right here in Colorado, and worked as an Army scout.
He was hired as a scout because he had so much experience traveling throughout the Great Plains, but also because he did know the American Indians. The folks in the Army didn't really know much about working with the Indians, but he did. So that became very helpful.
Buffalo Bill earned his nickname as a hunter for the Kansas Pacific Railroad. Cody was hired to provide buffalo meat for the railroad workers as they constructed line through the prairie. He proved to be so skilled in hunting bison that he earned his nickname Buffalo Bill Cody.
I think there's been a little bit of a misunderstanding that Buffalo Bill is the one who is responsible for the decimation of the American bison, and that's really not true. At that period of time, there were 30 to 60 million bison on the landscape, and there was a huge population of bison across the American West. So the amount that Buffalo Bill was hunting in order to feed the workers was really a sustainable amount at that point.
All kinds of factors converge to reduce the population of bison. By putting bison in such prominent places in the Wild West show, he brought the bison into so many minds as real creatures, as creatures that they saw that were pretty magic in various ways and just kind of beyond comprehension. So it's hard to think that the more conventional forms of bison preservation would have gotten anywhere near as far without Cody saying, "You'll want to care about these creatures."
Buffalo Bill had gained local notoriety in the West as a skilled scout and buffalo hunter, but a meeting with a famous author launched Buffalo Bill into the spotlight.
Dime novels were written about people like Kit Carson, Daniel Boone, Davy Crockett. They were looking for interesting frontier characters. Ned Buntline was a dime novel writer, and when he met Buffalo Bill and wrote a story about him, that catapulted Buffalo Bill into some national fame. And that is what really gave the sort of jump start to his career as a man in show business.
Buffalo Bill's growing fame came on the heels of the Indian Wars of the 1850s to 1890s, when European Americans were reeling from Custer's defeat at the Battle of the Little Bighorn, and the Cheyenne, Lakota, and Arapaho celebrated the rightful victory. It was also a time when the West of Cody's youth had changed forever.
We have this young man who realizes as he's watching the West disappear around him through development and railroads and other things, and he's realizing that where he grew up is no longer existing. And that's when he started developing his Wild West show.
He wanted to very much show the peoples of the West. So from the beginning, he had cowgirls, cowboys, he had Mexican vaqueros, he had the Lakota and Pawnee and some of the other Indian groups as well. And as time went by, that diversity only increased.
Fact and fiction often blurred together with Buffalo Bill's Wild West. The show was designed to entertain middle and upper class, mostly white audiences, and much of it bore little resemblance to reality. The dime novel stories of Buffalo Bill grew so exaggerated that Buffalo Bill the Showman became a fictionalized version of William F. Cody the Man. Many of the Wild West figures were romanticized or vilified in the show in a way they never were in life. Cowboys were transformed from their humble and troublesome roots to fanciful heroes on horseback. American Indians were portrayed as marauding antagonists, when in reality they were people with their own distinct lands and cultures, defending their way of life from Euro-American settlement.
I'd like to greet you in a good way from my heart to you.
American Indian performers were one of the most important parts of the Wild West show and became a centerpiece of the program. Back home, American Indian tribes had faced decades of broken promises from the American government and suffered greatly from the decimation of the buffalo.
Historically, Buffalo Bill's efforts to preserve some of the Indian culture is important because at that point the U.S. government is sending the Indian children off to schools, teaching them not to use their language, their culture, their clothing, teaching them to become good white capitalistic Christians. So he's preserving what a lot of people are trying to exterminate.
It was assimilation that was happening. They were assimilating us into a construct from a freewheeling people and living an inherent right that was given to us, and that was being taken away from us.
It was a time of tremendous racism in this country, a time when American Indians were on reservations, their hair was being cut, they weren't allowed to do their dances, they weren't even allowed to dress like they had traditionally dressed, but not with Buffalo Bill's Wild West.
The Wild West show provided an unexpected escape from the difficulties of reservation life and provided a way to participate in an American economy when they had few options remaining.
In the beginning of his relationship with the Lakota, but also the people, the other nations. So there was some confrontation or some disagreements, but eventually it became a working relationship where they had a relationship between not only the show, but started having relationship with families and helping them get their stories out and helping people to understand about the native people, the indigenous people.
Many of the Lakota who performed for Buffalo Bill enjoyed the work. They came back year after year. They became Ushkatewichasa, one who performs. They were performers. They were able to recreate their life on the plains, and it gave them very good money. Buffalo Bill paid them as well as anybody else in his show.
While the Wild West show provided income and helped preserve the American Indians' way of life, the consequences were sometimes complicated. Lakota performers were presented as relics of the past, and the show itself did little to educate audiences about the ongoing trauma of government oppression. Touring with the Wild West was a positive experience for some American Indian performers and their families, but it took a heavy toll on others. Even today, some Lakota families are uncomfortable with their ancestors' role as Wild West cast members.
In the Wild West, some white folks would be living in a cabin and Indians would attack the cabin. That would give the audience the stereotype that that's what Indians did. So there were aspects of the Wild West that seemed to say Indian people are a violent people who love nothing more than attacking white people. And really the great American Indian intellectual Vine Deloria Jr., Lakota, wrote a wonderful essay several decades ago saying, don't think this is open and shut.
Vine Deloria Jr. wrote, "Instead of degrading the Indians and classifying them as primitive savages, Cody elevated them to a status of equality with contingents from other nations. In so doing, he recognized and emphasized their ability as horsemen and warriors, and stressed their patriotism in defending their homelands." After Buffalo Bill's death, a condolence letter was written by the Oglala Lakota and sent to Buffalo Bill's wife.
Wapisutawa Wokichigalakapi William F. Cody Lakota Oyateki Etaha. The Oglala Sioux Indians of Pine Ridge, South Dakota, resolve that expression of deepest sympathy be extended by their committee in behalf of all the Oglalas to the wife, relatives, and friends of the late William F. Cody, Buffalo Bill. Our hearts are sad from the heavy burden of his passing.
While the American government and Western settlement changed the American Indian way of life, so too did the Lakota change Buffalo Bill.
He really also adapted our culture and our ways because he saw a different way where he became more compassionate. And there was a war bonnet that was given to Buffalo Bill. And that's one of the things that Lakotas have is their generosity. They give the most precious things away because they know it's going to come back one way or another.
One of the things that he always said was, if we have a woman and she can ride and shoot and do the same thing as a man, then by golly, she's going to be paid the same.
One of the things we like to acknowledge in Buffalo Bill is that he treated everybody equally. Equal pay for equal work. Women were equal to men when doing the same job.
Imagine, if you will, the Wild West show coming into a town. All the women come there in their Victorian outfits with the corsets tightly around them and the long, voluminous skirts and all of that. And then they see women in the Wild West show vaulting on and off of horses, wearing split skirts, or even things that are close to trousers, doing everything as well as a man did. That in itself, I think, struck a few blows, if you will, not only for women's suffrage, but for women having more rights and freedoms. He walked that line between the way people thought things were and the way he thought things should be.
The stereotypes of gender just had a interesting rattling when it came to Annie Oakley. And it's not simple. It's not, oh, he showed that women were just as capable of using firearms as men. Well, he showed that. And she still had the tightest waist clothing of anybody on the planet. The notion that you could do anything, could breathe under those terms. So the femininity thing was still very much accented in her performance. But it was quite a tradition-rattling version of femininity.
He brought in people from different cultures to showcase what their culture did best.
There are representatives of cultures from every inhabited continent in the world. So in 1893, he introduces the Congress of Rough Riders of the World, and they bring in Cossacks from Russia and gauchos from Argentina, Arabs from Saudi Arabia. By 1910, Buffalo Bill's Wild West looks like a little mini United Nations. And these all sat and ate together, and as people often would remark, they broke bread in harmony. Part of his goal was to show the diversity of people that make up our world and to encourage world understanding. I mean, there's something pretty special about that. He is a visionary. He's saying there's a whole different way of looking at things.
In the early days of Denver Mountain Parks, there was a road to Lookout Mountain and a funicular, which took visitors to the top of the mountain.
In this particular case, the funicular was like an open car roller coaster in a straight line, clacking up the hill, where people would then get out, enjoy the park, and then get back in and clack back down the hill to Golden. We don't know which way Buffalo Bill traveled. When he came here, he stood here, looked out over the view, looked to the east, and said, look at this, the plains where I grew up. Or you can look over to the west and see the beautiful mountains where I spent so much wonderful time hunting with my friends. This would be a great place to be buried. So then in 1917, when he was here in Denver, he recalled that visit, and he asked his wife and his priest at that time, bury me on Mount Lookout.
I think a lot of people are surprised to find when they arrive at the Buffalo Bill Museum that it's part of the Denver Mountain Park system and that they're in a park that's part of a very historic mountain park system. The Denver Mountain Parks were established in 1912, which is actually 4 years before the National Park Service was established. So it was a very forward-thinking system that was established by the city and county of Denver at the time.
The city of Denver was amazingly prescient to provide for its citizens in ways that even it didn't really fully understand. Actually, Denver's the only municipality that has a park system outside of its boundaries. And so what I would have people appreciate is the uniqueness of it, and that it was done to create the people's parks.
Buffalo Bill Cody's legacy of advocacy and reconciliation is more powerful today, perhaps, than ever before. He should be remembered not just for being a showman who brought the American West to the world, but as a man who overcame tremendous personal adversity, promoted the rights and freedoms of women, and helped the Lakota and other tribal communities as they were unwillingly ushered into a foreign way of life. The Denver Mountain Parks has been home to Buffalo Bill's final resting place for the last century. But his legacy and the spirit of those who performed with the Wild West show will live on.
If you've ever gone to a Western movie, if you've ever attended a rodeo, if you have ever done a hike through the mountains to enjoy the animals, to look at the wildlife and things like this, these are all the kinds of values that Buffalo Bill was promoting at a time when everybody else was promoting modern and building and construction and industrializing. But now here's Buffalo Bill keeping our West alive.
Museums have kind of a sacred obligation to say, don't oversimplify this person. Whatever you do, don't make him what he never was in life. Don't make him a simple, predictable character. He was not that.
Buffalo Bill was my inspiration and my hero. His generosity and his feeling of togetherness and love just was part of him.
Like Voltaire said, history is a trick we play on the dead. One generation's heroes are often shot out of the saddle by the next generation, and then the next generation coming after that says, oh no, let's rethink Buffalo Bill's life and his significance and maybe put him back in the saddle again.
Celebrate the new year with a Mile High City retrospective of the people, places, and events of 2022.
It's pretty cool. Everybody's engaged, everybody's excited, happy. So I think it could be better timing.
Join us for our favorites on the next episode of Elevating Denver.
When it comes to live music, there's only one destination, the world-renowned Red Rocks Amphitheater. Red Rocks Premieres is your ticket to Denver's most unique shows, and every concert provides a backstage pass to meet the band.
Music is really a reminder that we're all alive.
Powerful performances. Fantastic local bands. New shows added all the time. Don't miss Red Rocks Premieres.
Winter is here, and icy sidewalk conditions can be dangerous for pedestrians. All Denver property owners are responsible for the sidewalk in front of their property. If you see an icy spot on a public sidewalk, call 311 or report the problem through pocketgov.com. Remember to include a picture if you can, as they are always helpful to identify the exact location. The city will then send out a neighborhood inspector to the address as soon as possible. Businesses and apartment buildings are required to begin snow removal as soon as it stops snowing. Residential properties have 24 hours until they have to shovel. Let's all do our part to keep Denver's sidewalks safe for everyone. Denver 311 and PocketGov are helping you navigate Denver city services.
You want to be active in your community, but you don't know when or where things are happening? Well, don't sweat it. Just check out the upcoming events calendar on denvergov.org. It's your one-stop shop for community meetings, online workshops, and more, so you can be fully informed and involved. You can even search by date, keyword, or even what neighborhood you live in. Plus, you can also see on what holidays the city is closed. The upcoming events calendar, yet another great feature on the all-new denvergov.org.
Free and open to the public, the Petite Parade will take place inside the Mavens Windsor Room with festive entertainment provided by Denver's Handsome Little Devils, including live music, dancing, and Mardi Gras galore. Expect fantastic prizes awarded to participating floats. Looking back, moving forward offers a unique opportunity to see the pieces from the collection for the first time in decades. The exhibit highlights 45 images spanning a range of genres, approaches, and techniques, honoring the Colorado Photographic Arts Center's past while looking to the future as the organization celebrates its 60th year. Release your inner child at the Children's Museum's adults-only craft beer extravaganza. Tickets include samples of beers from local breweries, light bites, and best of all, an evening of play in our world-class exhibits. No kids this time, must be 21 or older. Our Planet, live in concert, will feature highlights from the groundbreaking documentary series. The stunning visuals will be showcased on a giant screen, featuring phenomenal lighting and outstanding sound from a 44-piece live orchestra. You'll be taken on a journey of beautiful visual and sound effects, creating a unique view of our planet's awe-inspiring glory. Contemporary artist Melanie Yazzie weaves together nature and narrative in multi-layered prints, paintings, and sculptures to explore the experiences that shaped her. Her work conveys qualities of wonder and healing, while encouraging viewers to engage with complex indigenous experiences. En garde! Check out the best young fencers in the country as they compete at the Junior Olympic Championships. Not all who wonder are lost. Local artists display works they've created while allowing their wonder to take over during the creative process. And that's a quick look at what's happening in Denver this week.
The Snow Angels program was born out of Denver Days, which is an initiative that Mayor Hancock started about 10 years ago. It's an idea that neighbors continue to help neighbors through the snowy months, and something that the Snow Angel program does is it creates an opportunity for neighbors to assist neighbors who are unable to shovel their front walks, whether it be because they're living with a disability or they just don't have the funds to be able to pay for private services, or elderly adults. We have 600 homes currently who need assistance shoveling their walks. We only have about 278 volunteers across the city. So there are 78 neighborhoods in Denver officially. 22% of those neighborhoods do not have a volunteer in them. So it's roughly 17 neighborhoods that don't have anyone who has signed up to serve those needs.
So the sign up for the Snow Angels program was pretty easy. I'm pretty sure I just entered my address and my neighborhood area, and then when it snows, I get an email that has a list of addresses without people's individuals' names of places that need to be cleared from snow. And then that gets sent to kind of all of the volunteers in that particular area. And then you just go and see what's been done or what hasn't been done. And because they're clustered into neighborhoods, they're all pretty close.
So the volunteers that we're looking for is anyone who wants to assist their neighborhood. They can go onto our website, which is denvergov.org/snowangels. They would sign up to be a volunteer, and during a snowstorm, they would receive an email and they would say, in your neighborhood of Belcaro, we need some assistance with your neighbors. Here's an address of someone you can go help. And so really it is anyone who's looking to assist their neighbors. We have snow shovels that we give to all of our volunteers. So if someone signs up to be a snow angel, they receive one of our shovels so that they don't have to go out and buy one if they don't already have one.
It feels important to me for neighbors to help neighbors because there are a lot of needs in our community, and sometimes it can be hard to know how to contribute. And I know there are lots of ways to get involved. If someone likes the snow, if someone likes physical activity, if someone just wants to have like an easy, doesn't take that long, like sometimes even 15 minutes, way to contribute, I think Snow Angels is a great program for that. I think for folks who might be hesitant to sign up, I know that there can be a lot of shame or stigma around needing help, and there's this value around being independent, but really people like me want to be able to help and want to be able to allow folks who need a little bit of assistance to still be a valued part of our community.
I had a woman call me a couple days ago. She's 80 years old. Her husband is a veteran who is almost 90, and they can't risk the fall, especially when it gets very cold outside. The snow tends to freeze, and then there's an option for slipping and falling. And they just are unable to put their own health at risk in order to do that. So somebody who is elderly would require some assistance. Same thing with someone who might be living with a disability, somebody who has a walker or a cane or something along those lines. It's very dangerous to be out on front steps and on front walks when it's snowy and cold.
I definitely feel a neighborhood pride in making sure that the area is accessible. The winter can feel really miserable to people sometimes. The days get shorter, it gets darker, it gets cold, people stay inside, and it's helpful just to have a little bit of neighborly care. And whether people notice or not, I think putting that out into the neighborhood is helpful for creating the kind of place that I want to live in.
I would say that volunteering is a matter of the heart. I think that if you feel the need to help out but you don't know where to start, a great start would be in your own neighborhood. You don't have to make your way across the city in a foot of snow to be helpful, to be of assistance. You know, it takes just a short amount of your time and it makes you feel good.
I secretly, although now not so secretly, love shoveling. And the reason that I love it is because it's a pretty active thing to do outside. And so in the morning, rather than just like cuddling inside where it's nice and cozy, I'll put on all my layers and go outside and like make it a workout. And so I'll try to like hinge at the hips and use good posture and make it kind of a game and make it feel active. And normally it's either snowing, which feels like a winter wonderland, or it's already sunny and beautiful, and then it feels like a fun outdoor activity.
Welcome to your Denver City Council. Please stand by. Full coverage of your Denver City Council begins now.
Welcome back, everyone. Council will now reconvene from our earlier session. There is no unfinished business. We do have one proclamation being read this evening. Councilman Flynn, will you please read Proclamation 22-179?
Thank you, Madam President. I certainly will. Proclamation number 23-0179, a proclamation honoring Tim Sandos for more than 50 years of service to the city. There you are. Don't run out. Whereas Tim Sandos began his service to the city of Denver at the age of 13 when he was appointed to the Mayor's Commission on Youth by Mayor Bill McNichols in 1972. And whereas with 4 of his brothers, Tim helped establish and operate the Bare Body Products Company, which developed, manufactured, and sold nylon wallets with Velcro fasteners, achieving millions of dollars in sales. Whereas from 1985 to 1989, Tim was a special projects coordinator for King Soopers, helping to increase employee participation in the 401k to 3/4 of the workforce. And whereas in 1989, Tim was appointed by Mayor Federico Pena to co-chair the 92-member Citizens for Denver's Future Committee, which identified $242 million in projects to revitalize Denver and was successful getting a bond package passed to fund the projects, after which the mayor appointed him to executive assistant to the mayor. And whereas Tim was elected to an at-large seat on the Denver City Council in 1991, following in the footsteps of his father, Manuel Sam Sandos, becoming the only father and son team to hold seats on the council. And whereas while on council, Tim established and council passed the first civilian review board to oversee safety department operations and to address allegations of impropriety in the police, fire, and sheriff's departments. And whereas after his term on council, Tim ran for Colorado's 1st congressional district seat, losing to Congresswoman Diana DeGette, and then returned to the private sector as regional director for government affairs at Comcast, then moving on in 1998 to state president, Nebraska for U.S. West Communications. And whereas U.S. West Nebraska provided critical support to Offutt Air Force Base when President George W. Bush landed there on September 11th, 2001. And Offutt was the only location the president could land and communicate with all branches of the military throughout the world, with Tim's team being responsible for ensuring the connectivity of those communications. And whereas Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld named Tim to the Joint Civilian Oversight Conference, the Department of Defense's oldest and most prestigious public liaison program, and the only DoD-sponsored program enabling business and community leaders to have a full immersive experience with every branch of the military. And whereas Tim served as Executive Vice President and Managing Director of Emerging Markets for Citibank in St. Louis from 2002 to 2006, as CEO of the National Association of Hispanic Real Estate Professionals in Washington, D.C. from 2006 to 2009, as Senior Vice President of Wells Fargo in St. Louis from 2009 to 2012, and was back with Comcast from 2013 to 2017. And whereas Tim returned to Denver city government in 2017, after being named the Executive Director of the North Denver Cornerstone Collaborative by Mayor Michael Hancock, helping residents and businesses in the area manage growth and build affordable housing. NDCC was later folded into the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure, where he served as the Executive Officer for Community and Business Engagement. And finally, whereas Tim Sandos is now retiring from the city of Denver after more than 50 years of service to the community. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the Council of the City and County of Denver, Section 1, that the Council of the City and County of Denver honors Tim Sandos for his service and dedication to the people of Denver. Section 2, that the Secretary of Council shall affix the seal of the City and County of Denver to this proclamation, and that a copy be transmitted to Tim Sandos.
Thank you, Councilman Flynn. Your motion to adopt?
Thank you. I move that proclamation 20-0179 be adopted.
23, I think we had a typo in that. 23-0179. Can I get a second? Thank you so much. It's been moved and seconded. Comments by members of council. Councilman Flynn, we'll start with you.
Thank you, Madam President. Sometimes it seems like our computer system dates from 1972 as well, right? Thank you. I got to know your father, Tim, before I even knew he had kids. I had no idea he had 9, but I met your dad when I was covering the council for the Rocky Mountain News over at that table, and got to know his dedication to service to the community. Went well beyond this room, well beyond this chamber. And I think it goes well beyond your dad as well. It goes into each and every one of his children. I think, are they all here today? Most of them? Are we missing it? It is remarkable how much over those 50 years, Tim, that you moved around and took on so many different roles. It's mind-boggling how you handled all that with professionalism and dedication to this community. But I also want to mention that I would like to think that through honoring you, we're also honoring your mom and dad. Your dad passed away a long time ago, as you know too well. Your mom only recently passed away, and we miss her tremendously. But through your mom and dad, they raised up a family that is so dedicated to the city and county of Denver and to the betterment, let me say, starting on the west side, but really the whole city, with the Christmas Basket program, which has been my privilege to assist with for a number of years now, and just with your total dedication to the Denver community. I'd like to think that with this proclamation, Tim, we are honoring you specifically, but also the legacy of the Sandos family in Denver. With that, Madam President, I ask for the full support of my colleagues.
Thank you very much. We have a few people who want to give comments first. Councilwoman Ortega.
Thank you, Madam President. I don't know if we're able to add our names to these anymore like we used to, but just want to add my gratitude to Tim and the entire Sandos family for the multitude of contributions that have been made to our city. I worked for Sal Carpio when Sam Sandos was on the city council, and that's when Ramona Martinez was a staff member to Sam. So I had the privilege of getting to know him, just an incredible human being. I remember one time when he was in the hospital, he actually took all his work with him, and his family had to say, "What are you doing?" You know, that can wait. You don't need to be doing work while you're in your hospital bed. But Tim and I also served together on the city council. And I had the privilege of working with you in your role at NDCC and have just seen the incredible work that you've done and your whole family has done, not just with the Christmas Basket program, but with your brother who has worked in the schools and, you know, just the fact that you were such great entrepreneurs at very young age to come up with that concept of making those Velcro nylon wallets and whatnot. I remember owning one of those, didn't realize that they came from your family. But really, I just want to say thank you for all of your contributions, for your friendship. We've been dear friends for many, many years, and your mom and dad were incredible. Had the privilege of knowing your mom as well, seeing her at all the HD1 meetings in Southwest Denver when she lived there and was actively involved in the Democratic Party. But, you know, it starts with your parents, right? And I see the impact that they had on all of you, and just want to say much appreciation. So Godspeed in your retirement.
Thank you very much. Councilwoman Sandoval.
Just want to say thank you, Tim, and your whole family for serving Denver. When I was working for Councilwoman Judy Montero, I had the opportunity of working with you in the North Denver Cornerstone Collaborative, and as a lifetime Northsider and who is able to represent the North Side, the Sandoval and Sandos go back, way back. I remember seeing your family at La Casita, working for my dad. And as a council member, I have loved going to North High School and helping the tradition of the Sam Sandos baskets. It makes a difference when you serve people in that way without asking anything in return and serving the people of Denver. I was told yesterday that sometimes these are thankless jobs, that the public doesn't thank us, and we probably get more email complaints than we do being thankful. And I stopped to think about that, and I thought, we get thanked in a different way. We get thanked by making sure that the roads are open. We get making sure that park names get changed. We get thanked by changing legislation that will be lasting, that we get thanked by having Latinos who represent us have reflective representation of our community. And so sometimes it's not always the thank you necessarily like these proclamations say, but it's the work. And just want to say at this time of when we do get to proclaim and thank you, just want to say thanks for being here for Denver. Thanks for also being, it's your generation and my father's generation who opened the door for Latinos to represent Denver. And as a person born and raised in Denver, it's an honor. And had you all not done that, we wouldn't be up here being able to serve as a Latina, being born and raised in the North Side. So thank you for your family, for leading the way, for opening the door for my father, and for all of those who we are opening the door for. And you'll be missed, but you're from Denver. I'll see you around. We'll catch up sometime. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Councilman Cashman?
Yeah, thank you, Madam President. Tim, congratulations. I'm sitting here listening, and this guy started serving his community when he was 13, and then he had this business, and then he led this corporation, and he ran for office, and he served in office, and then he led another corporation, and then he was asked to serve in a federal role, and I'm thinking, this poor guy can't hold a job, you know? But I think you probably made your family proud along the way. I just wanted to say thank you as well. I think we met first when I had my newspaper, and I actually remember talking to your dad one time. I don't remember what the issue was, but what I've always enjoyed, I think our politics have probably been pretty much in line along the way, but when we've had the occasional opposite sides, you've always been great to talk to. I've always learned from you, and I appreciate the respectful way you've carried yourself. So good luck along the way. Sorry to see I won't see you around as much. Thank you. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. And Councilwoman Knight?
Thank you so much. I was actually going to mention, I don't have as much history as some of the others up here with you and your family, but the graciousness with which I felt the same kindness from you, and the graciousness with which I have seen you embrace all the members of our community. And I think that you have had not an easy couple years, and you have been a fighter in the kindest and most humble way. There are different kinds of fighters in our world of politics, and you have fought in a way that has always led with kindness. And I think that that particular way of fighting has really been, I think, your special gift in how you've served and the role that you've been in, because it has been sometimes contentious space that you've been in, but you have not brought the contention, right? I have seen you bring a different kind of de-escalating approach, and that approach has really, I think, been your gift that you've brought, and I've really appreciated it. So I wanted to thank you. And I just want to wish you the best, because you have earned the rest and the travel and all of the places. And I see your family, right? They have shared you through all of those jobs and all those journeys, and now hopefully they get to enjoy you. So may you enjoy every minute of all that rest and pleasure that you've earned. Happy retirement.
Thank you so much. Just to add a few things of my own, it's been a pleasure to be able to work with you finally towards the end of your career in the city, and just knowing that I stand in the shoes that your dad really laid out. He was the first representative for District 3. I am the 5th, and it is such an honor to be able to represent the West Side. It is always your home, and this chamber will always be welcoming to you. So thank you so much for your years of service, Tim. Really appreciate it. Those are, seeing no one else in the queue, Madam Secretary, roll call.
Sita Baca. Herndon.
Aye.
Black.
Aye.
Clark. Flynn.
Aye.
Gilmore.
Aye.
Hines.
Aye.
Cashman.
Aye.
Kinich. Aye. Ortega.
Aye.
Sandoval,
Aye.
Sawyer,
Aye.
Madam President.
Aye. Madam Secretary, close the voting and announce the results.
11 ayes.
11 ayes. Proclamation 23-179 has been adopted. And we have a few minutes for proclamation acceptance. Councilman Flynn, if you'd like to call up someone to accept the proclamation.
Thank you, Madam President. Gee, I don't know who to call up. let me call up Tim. And as he's walking up to the podium, remark on how odd it is for me to be up here where he used to be while I used to be down there. Tim, welcome.
Thank you, Councilman Flynn. And you're right, that was exactly the chair that I sat in at that table when I had the opportunity to be on council. I want to thank you all from the bottom of my heart for recognizing not just me, but our family. And that is a critical thing to really remember. In my career, really started from my mother and my father, and you see the beautiful family that we have, but what each and every one of us has been able to bring to the city of Denver. Mom used to say that we didn't have 3 R's, we had 6 R's. We had respect, responsibility, and religion that added on to reading, writing, and arithmetic. Respect for every person, regardless of where they came from, that everyone deserves the same level of respect. Responsibility. Each of us is responsible for making our world around us better. In religion, so that we have a compass about where we're going. And you've seen that from each and every one of our family members. I'm really excited to see some of the younger kids in our family, because that's the next generation that will step forward and is already stepping forward, carry the ball and the torch of where we go. I loved your dad. He taught in so many different ways. And as I go through, Councilwoman Torres, you were right down the street. And my brother Paul is your uncle. Councilman Cashman, we had the opportunity when I was first learning the ropes to be able to learn how to work with community, with you and others. Councilwoman Gilmore, I get to be graced in living in Green Valley Ranch now with my family. Kevin, you were so good to my mother as she passed away. And you and Harriet brought so much. Of course, each and every one of you, Debbie, we served together, actually went to the same high schools. What I really see is that we all really are still a family. It's a city family. And irregardless of the positions that we may take at times, we always know how to come back together for the greater good of the city. And that is what I take away from having the opportunity to serve the city of Denver, the people of Denver, for so long. Councilman Flynn, when you read through my resume, what I had in my mind is, damn, I couldn't keep a job, could I? I'm bouncing from one to the other. But they were all learnings that helped us to move forward. We do intend to continue to participate with the city family in any way that we can. Please don't hesitate to call us. I'm already bored, so give me something to do. God bless you all. Thank you so much for this honor.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for being here tonight. We do have 2 public hearings tonight. For those participating in person, when called upon, please come to the podium. On the monitor on the wall, you'll see your time counting down. For those participating virtually, please wait until our host promotes you to speaker. When you're promoted, accept the promotion, turn on your camera if you have one, and your microphone. All speakers should begin their remarks by telling council your name and city of residence, and if you feel comfortable doing so, your home address. If you've signed up to answer questions only, please state your name and note you are available for questions of council. Speakers will have 3 minutes. There is no yielding of time. If translation is needed, you'll be given an additional 3 minutes for your comments to be interpreted. Speakers must stay on the topic of the hearing and direct your comments to council as a whole. Please refrain from profane or obscene speech and refrain from individual or personal attacks. Councilman Hines, will you please put Bill 23-0012 on the floor for final passage?
I move that Council Bill 23-0012 be placed upon final consideration and do pass.
Thank you. Can I get a motion in a second? Or a second? Excellent. It's been moved and seconded. The required public hearing for Council Bill 23-0012 is open. May we have the staff report, CPD?
Good afternoon, members of City Council. My name is Fran Peñafiel. I'm Senior City Planner with Community Planning and Development. And today I am going to present an overview of the rezoning for 1254 North Monaco Street Parkway. This is an applicant-driven application requesting to change the zoning classification for the property at 1254 North Monaco Street Parkway to allow for an accessory dwelling unit in the rear of the property, while all other forms and use standards would remain the same. The subject property is in Council District 5, Amanda Sawyer's district, in the Montclair neighborhood. And the property is currently in the Urban Edge Single Unit DX Zone District, which in this location would only allow for the suburban house and urban house building forms in a minimum zone lot size of 6,000 square feet. And as you can see on the map, the property is surrounded by more ESUDX. The site is 12,000 square feet, and the current land use for the site is single unit residential, and it's totally surrounded by other residential uses. Shown on the photos, the character of the neighborhood is mostly residential. The subject property can be seen in the bottom left image of this slide, kind of hidden by the trees. Now let's take a quick look at the process. Throughout the rezoning process, application notifications have been provided according to code requirements. Planning Board recommended approval unanimously on consent agenda on December 7th. And to date, staff has received 1 letter of support from Strong Denver, a citywide RNO. Now moving on to a review criteria. For a rezoning to be approved by City Council, it must be found the requested map amendment is consistent with 5 review criteria found on the Denver Zoning Code. Our role as staff planner is to evaluate the requested rezoning, in this case ESUD1X, against these 5 criteria. The first criterion is consistency with adopted plans. There are 3 plans applicable to this rezoning. We have Comprehensive Plan 2040, Blueprint Denver, and the East Area Plan from 2020. Looking at Comprehensive Plan 2040, as stated in the staff report, the rezoning is consistent with several goals in this plan. The map amendment will provide equity by creating a greater mix of housing options in every neighborhood, and it will lead to an environmentally resilient Denver by promoting infill development where infrastructure and services are already in place. Now looking at Blueprint Denver, the subject property is mapped as part of the Urban Edge neighborhood context in Blueprint Denver. And the Future Places map designates the property as low residential place type. These place types have predominantly single and 2-unit uses, and accessory dwelling units are appropriate. Monaco Street Parkway and 13th Avenue are designated as residential arterial street type, which are mostly characterized by residential uses. The growth area in Blueprint Denver is all other areas of the city. These areas are anticipated to see 10% employment growth and 20% housing growth by 2040. Blueprint also includes specific policy recommendations. Housing Policy 4 focuses on diversifying housing choice through the expansion of accessory dwelling units throughout all residential areas. And now looking at the East Area Plan of 2020. This plan was adopted in 2020 and updates the guidance on Blueprint Denver. The subject property is within the Urban Edge neighborhood context in this plan and designates the site as within the low residential single unit future place. This subcategory is recommended in areas where single unit homes with accessory dwelling units are appropriate. Also, Land Use and Build Form Policy L6 states that the East Area neighborhood should be inclusive places that integrate missing middle housing and accessory dwelling units. The ESU D1X zone district allows for a single unit residential use with an additional dwelling unit accessory to the primary single unit use. Therefore, the proposed ESU D1X zone district is consistent with the East Area Plan guidance. Staff also finds that the requested zoning meets the next two criteria. The rezoning will result in uniformity of district regulations, and it will further the public health, safety, and welfare, primarily through implementation of adopted plans. The justifying circumstance for this rezoning is a city adopted plan. Since the approval of the existing ESUDX zone district, the city has adopted the comprehensive plan, Blueprint Denver, and the East Area Plan. As stated throughout this presentation, the proposed rezoning meets the intent of these plans. Overall, the proposed rezoning is consistent with the Urban Edge neighborhood context residential districts and the ESU D1X zone district. With that, staff recommends approval based on finding all review criteria has been met.
Thank you very much. We have no individuals signed up to speak this evening on this item. Are there questions from members of council on Council Bill 23-0012? Seeing none, public hearing is closed. Are there comments by members of council on Council Bill 23-0012? Councilwoman Sawyer.
Thanks, Council President Torres. I did want to just note, it looks like there is someone in the audience who maybe didn't know what our sign-up processes are and did not get an opportunity to speak. So would you mind if I just called her up for questions?
That would be fine, yes.
So to give you an opportunity to just quickly say what you were going to say. Thanks.
Thank you for noticing. My name is Claire Carwell. I'm the architect working with homeowners Stephanie and Lewis Williams on this rezoning. And they could be here tonight. They have a new little baby. And part of the reason for this rezoning is to get a little bit of extra space in their current home. I didn't see any photos of the actual property here, but it's a really unique property along North Monaco, really beautiful architectural character. And so we're trying to preserve that. We're really committed to keeping that history kind of alive. And with that, allowing us to have this ADU in the back area, we would be hoping to build on top of the existing garage. And we would be hoping to keep that existing character and form as well. And I think that this gives us the opportunity to kind of keep that fabric of the history of these homes. This home was built in 1891. Which is a very old structure. So the growing family that Stephanie and Lewis have, along with the work from home kind of paradigm that we're in these days, is such that the office and guest room that they currently had is now filled by baby. So they're looking to expand, and this seems like a really good place to do it, so that we can kind of keep that character of the home. So other than what was presented previously, we just are hopeful that this will be approved so that we can kind of continue to keep these beautiful old homes alive and well, while still kind of adapting them to the use and expansion of circumstances today. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Madam President. I will just thank you for joining us. And I will just say this is our, I think our 8th ADU application in the Montclair neighborhood. And we will be, my office is hosting 2 community meetings, one on March 8th and one on March 14th. And we have a survey that is out right now to see if the community would like for us to rezone the Montclair statistical neighborhood for ADUs, given the number of ADU requests that are coming through. So we'll see how that goes. There's a survey out for it right now. These are conversations we had in the East Area Plan. There is some opposition to ADUs from residents in the neighborhood. And so it's important that we have the conversation about that, and we'll we'll see, what our survey results and the results of our conversations around that are. But in the meantime, tonight, I think it's pretty clear that this makes sense. It is a great way to preserve what is an extraordinary piece of history in Denver. This is a very cool house. And so I'm glad that they are considering an ADU as opposed to making some structural changes to the house. I think that's really important, and I'm very supportive of it. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Seeing no one else in queue, Madam Secretary, roll call on Council Bill 23-0012.
Sita Baca,
Aye.
Herndon,
Aye.
Black,
Aye.
Clark, Flynn,
Aye.
Gilmore,
Aye.
Hines,
Aye.
Cashman,
Aye.
Knech,
Aye.
Ortega,
Aye.
Sandoval,
Aye.
Sawyer,
Aye.
Madam President.
Aye. Madam Secretary, close the voting and announce the results.
12 ayes.
12 ayes. Council Bill 23-0012 has passed. Thank you very much. Councilman Hines, will you please put Council Bill 23-0011 on the floor for final passage?
I move that Council Bill 23-0011 be placed upon final consideration and to pass.
You. Let's get you in there as the mover. We'll need a second after that. Thank you very much. It's been moved and seconded. The required public hearing for Council Bill 23-0011 is open. May we have the staff report? Hi, Libby.
Yes. Thank you, Council President. I'm Libby Adams with Community Planning and Development, and I'll be presenting the map amendment to rezone to allow for the Westwood Recreation Center and the expansion of the Westwood Park. So first we'll discuss the request, then information on the location and context, followed by the process, and then finally we'll discuss how this request relates to the review criteria. So the Executive Director of Community Planning and Development is acting as the applicant on behalf of the Department of Parks and Recreation for this rezoning. CPD is proposing to rezone just under 3.5 acres from EMX3 with the use overlays 1 and 2, ETUC and ESUD to OSA, which is a district for parks owned, operated, or leased by the city. And the purpose of this map amendment, as I previously stated, is to allow for a new recreation center and the expansion of an existing park. And the recreation center was actually a part of the Elevate Bond program that was approved by Denver voters in 2017. This application is located in District 3 in Council President Torres's district in the Westwood neighborhood. As previously stated, the current zoning is EMX3 with the adult and billboard use overlays, ETUC, and then, so that's for the recreation center site, and then ESUD for the Westwood Park expansion property. EMX3 is a mixed-use district allowing a variety of commercial, residential, and retail uses. And then ETUC and ESUD are 2-unit and single-unit residential districts, respectively. The recreation center site is currently vacant. The former structure has already been demolished. And then the property on Kentucky for the expansion of the Westwood Park has actually already kind of been made a part of the park. So this slide shows the existing recreation center site with the subject property on the upper left-hand side. And then this site shows, or this is the Westwood Park property, again with the subject property on the upper left. The Department of Parks and Recreation began outreach for this project in the fall of 2020 and included surveys, public meetings, both virtual and in person, focus groups, and then other events. And the map amendment was complete in the middle of October, and an informational notice was sent out on October 11th. This went to Planning Board where it was unanimously recommended approval in December, and to date, we have not received any comments from the public. So now for the review criteria, there are 5 that must be met in order for rezoning to be approved. The first is consistency with adopted plans, and there are 4 plans that are applicable to this rezoning. This rezoning for a recreation center and to expand an existing park will improve equitable access to resources that improve quality of life and ensure that parks keep pace with Denver's growth. Both of these are consistent with the strategies in the comprehensive plan. And then moving to Blueprint Denver, this area maps the future neighborhood context as urban and urban edge. And parks are important and necessary amenities in all of our city's neighborhood contexts. So rezoning to OSA is consistent with the future neighborhood context. The future place types are identified as community corridor and low residential. Community corridor, which is the site of the future recreation center, provides a mix of office, commercial, and residential uses. And public spaces are flexible and benefit different types of users. And then low residential areas are mostly single and 2-unit uses, and outdoor space is often privatized, but there's also access to public parks. So OSA is consistent with both of these descriptions because it will allow for accessible and flexible park space for a variety of users. And then in Blueprint Denver, Morrison Road is identified as a mixed-use arterial, which includes a variety of uses, again, office, commercial, residential, consistent with the future recreation center use. And then West Kentucky Avenue is designated as a residential collector, where residential uses are primarily, but those may also include schools, civic uses, parks, and small retail nodes. And then West Walsh Place, South Raleigh Street, and Ohio Street are all local streets, which vary in their land uses. And then the recreation center site along Morrison Road is designated as a community center and corridor, where we anticipate 20% of new jobs and 25% of new housing. And then the Westwood Park property is in the all other areas of the city, where we anticipate 10% of new jobs and 20% of new housing. So this rezoning will help accommodate the growth that is coming to this area by providing more opportunities for parks and recreation. And then all large map amendments like this one should be guided by the equity concepts. So the access to opportunity score is a composite of the neighborhood equity index, proximity to high capacity transit, and access to centers and corridors. And these neighborhoods have moderate scores in this category, with lower access to grocery stores, public transit, and healthcare, and less equitable in childhood obesity and life expectancy. But the proposed rezoning will allow for a recreation center and a larger park, which may improve the metrics for childhood obesity and life expectancy for this area. The vulnerability to involuntary displacement score is based on median household income, percent of renter occupied units, and educational attainment. And this area scores as more vulnerable based on all three of these indicators. The vulnerability to involuntary displacement score also includes supplemental data to kind of further explain the vulnerability of the area. So this area does have a lower percentage of non-Hispanic white residents than the city, but it has since seen an increase greater than the city, indicating that some displacement may be occurring. Westwood also has a lower median household income than citywide and has seen less of an increase, making residents potentially more vulnerable. They've also seen a significant increase in residents over the age of 65, and residents over 65 are sometimes more vulnerable to displacement. And then lastly, Westwood has seen a greater increase in residential property taxes than the city, making, again, the residents potentially more vulnerable. So the city understands that, when we do large capital projects such as this one, that can oftentimes lead to more private investment and cause displacement of residents and businesses. So as a result, the city has identified anti-displacement strategies that were included in both this year and last year's budget. So these include things like small business loans, grants for community groups, expanded funds to help businesses with rent and relocation assistance, a housing prioritization policy, funds for community land trusts to acquire more affordable housing, and then extending covenants for affordable housing. And then the housing diversity score includes 5 measures: percentage of middle density housing, home size diversity, ownership rates compared to rental rates, housing costs, and the number of income restricted units. And Westwood has greater than average diversity based on 3 metrics: missing middle housing diversity and bedroom counts, and the income restricted units. But this equity measure will likely not be impacted, as this rezoning is not proposing to provide any housing. And then the last map shows the mix of jobs and areas of the city with the dominant industry depicted by color. This area doesn't have a color because there's not enough jobs per acre to classify the mix of jobs. There's just 29 jobs is what our data shows. And again, this rezoning will have a limited impact on jobs diversity. So now for Game Plan for a Healthy City, which was adopted in 2019. And this plan identifies Westwood as an area in high demand for a park and recreation facility. It also recommends acquiring land to build facilities to keep pace with Denver's growth and to focus park resources on underserved neighborhoods. So rezoning the subject properties to OSA will further both of these recommendations. And then in the Westwood neighborhood plan, this recommends creating space for the community to gather and acquiring property to expand Westwood Park. So again, OSA would further these recommendations. And then there's also a transformative project identified in the neighborhood plan, which specifically calls for building a West Denver Recreation Center with the ultimate goal of locating it in the Westwood neighborhood. So this rezoning would allow for just that. This would be a new recreation center into Westwood. The map amendment also meets the next two criteria. It will result in uniformity of district regulations within the parks and open space districts, and it furthers the public health, safety, and general welfare by increasing access to places for physical activity. And then the justifying circumstance is the Westwood Neighborhood Plan, which explicitly discusses expanding Westwood Park and acquiring a property for a recreation center. And lastly, this rezoning is consistent with the open space context and the intent of the OSA district. So given the finding that all review criteria have been met, staff recommends approval of this rezoning, and that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Libby. We have no individuals signed up to speak this evening. Are there questions from members of council on Council Bill 23-0011? Councilwoman Ortega?
I just wanted to ask one question about the park in Kentucky where we've added some land to it. Does Parks and Rec have any expectation to like update the park designation so that that additional part of the land is protected? The designation, as you all know, is what protects our park land. And given that that's a new component to that park, will that designation be updated? And Jesus or somebody from Parks and Rec, if you know the answer to that question. If not, if it's something you can look into and let us know if you don't know that tonight.
Hi, good evening. Jesus Arante, Community Engagement Specialist with Denver Parks and Recreation. Westwood Park as a whole is designated. There is an intent to designate this land. Okay. I'm not sure what round of designations that will come up with.
Okay. And we don't typically designate our rec centers, correct? It's just the parks that we designate.
That I'm not certain about, especially because so many of the rec centers are in parks.
Right.
So I'm not certain if we designate recreation sites. That's something I could look into.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's the only question I have.
Great. Thank you. Councilwoman Sawyer?
Thanks. Wait, Jesus, don't go anywhere. I'm just curious, how many years has it been since the representatives from Council District 3 have been fighting for a rec center in Westwood?
Since I lived there in that neighborhood years ago.
Yeah, there are people on here that might be more qualified to answer that. Just historically, I know the predecessor to Councilwoman Torres in the 2008 Better Denver bond had tried to move some money around to get a rec center in Westwood, and it was not in that one, but was approved in the Elevate Denver bond in 2017.
Thank you. It's really exciting. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Seeing no one else in queue, the public hearing is closed. Comments by members of council on Council Bill 23-0011, and I will take privilege and go first. Thank you so much. Exactly the point to make, Councilwoman Sawyer. This is a long time coming. particularly for the rec center, but also for this opportunity that we've had to expand the Westwood Park. And so both of these are welcome additions to the portfolio. And I know that the neighborhood is anticipating a really wonderful rec center. It is currently under design and in development, and can't wait to see, I think, kind of the next steps for that. But a really welcome addition to the Morrison Road corridor, the Kentucky corridor for the park. So thank you all so much for keeping all of this moving forward. Seeing no one else in queue, Madam Secretary, roll call on Council Bill 23-0011.
Sita Baca. Aye. Herndon.
Aye.
Black. Aye. Clark. Flynn.
Aye.
Gilmore.
Aye.
Hines.
Aye.
Cashman.
Aye.
Kinich. Aye. Ortega.
Aye.
Sandoval.
Aye.
Sawyer. Aye. Madam President.
Aye. Madam Secretary, close the voting and announce the results.
12 ayes.
12 ayes. Council Bill 23-0011 has passed. Yay. Thank you all. There is no pre-adjournment announcement tonight. There being no further business before this body, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
I think it's pretty clear that the overarching purpose of the company towns was really to control workers, and in particular to prevent the United Mine Workers from gaining a foothold in southern Colorado. CF&I had its own detective agency. Coal companies often employed the Pinkerton Detective Agency, so they were spying on workers who were trying to organize. They used violence against people who they suspected of organizing, beating them up, throwing them out of the company towns, denying them employment.
Mother Jones was known as the most dangerous woman in America. Mary Harris was an Irish immigrant who came to the United States and worked as a school teacher and a dressmaker. Tragically, she lost her entire family to yellow fever, both her husband and her children. And when that happened, Mother Jones decided that she really should be the mother of the working class. And so by the 1890s, she was one of the most active and charismatic and energetic labor organizers in the country. Wherever she went, press attention followed.
The miners met in a conference in Trinidad in September of 1913. Mother Jones, she said, if you men are too cowardly to vote to go on strike, there are enough women in the county to beat the hell out of you. If it's strike or slavery, strike until the last one of you drops dead.
And when those workers voted to strike in the fall of 1913, they weren't just fighting for better pay or better working conditions. They were actually fighting for the right to live freely, for the right to exercise their rights as American citizens, to not be surrounded by armed guards.